know a place where we can go to lay the troubles down, meeting your soul. I know a place where mercy flows. Take the stains, make you whiter than snow. Like a tide, it is rising up deep inside a current that moves and makes it come alive. Living water that brings the dead to life. We're going.
Well, good evening, everyone. This is John Craig, and I'm so glad that you've joined me here this evening. It's just going to be me this evening, and Sandy is taking a night out, and she thought it would be best that I give you all an update about what's going on. So I thought I'd go ahead and pass on some information. As you've just seen, that this is Walking in Spirit and Truth. It is Tuesday evening, December the 15th, the year 2020, and I am just saying that my head is spinning with all the different things that are going on. So I bet you are too, or you're probably saying, there's so much information that's going on right now, I can't even keep up. Well, that's the way I feel, and so you also know too. And some of the updates I'm going to be giving this evening, basically, Sandy's like, I don't want to hear bad news. But I'm not going to give only bad news. I'm going to give you some good news so that you and I can join together as one, and that we can be a people united as one, so that we know how to stand and encourage one another in the day and the hour that we're living in. So with that said, I'm going to let you know who I am. My name is John Craig. My wife is Sandi Craig, and she is on some shows with me during the week, and she's got her own show, which is the next chapter, which is on Thursday mornings at 8:45. And then you could also join us on Let Us Reason Together on Monday mornings at 8:45. If my workload allows me, it's been kind of challenging here over the last few months, but we still have that. And then also Monday Morning War Room, we're on that here on the Messianic Lamb Network. And then, of course, on Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. Central, we have that. So here we are, and this is, of course, this is Tuesday evening. It is December the 15th, and Sandy and I pastor Life of Worship Ministries here in Amarillo, Texas. And so if you're ever in the area, we would love for you to come by and join us. We have our Shabbat Midrash Torah portion study at 2 p.m. at 4000 South Washington. That's at 2 p.m. and then at 5 p.m. we have a worship service. And so we believe that worship is very important and integral in our lifestyle and our life of worship. And so we have a time of praise and worship. We have a time for ministry and a message. We have kids ministry that's going on, and we would love for you to join us as well. So now that I've said all that, let's get into some of the things that I wanted to bring to you this evening. Now, here's the reason why I want to talk to you about current events tonight. And you know that I do bring current events, and sometimes more often than not. But why? Because everything that we are living in right now does affect us, because we're living in a culture and in a society and in a world that we're seeing biblical prophecy unfolding before our very eyes. And when those things unfold, we need to look up and see that our redemption is drawing near. And that's why I bring these things up, and that's why I'm talking about it. But also, in the midst of these times, are we saying, well, is this going to be the year for the greater Exodus? Maybe. But if not, then we also still need to know how to live, because we know that in the last 2,000 years, and you can probably even say longer than that, because if you go back during the time of the Maccabees, we can see that the same type of things that the Maccabees faced, that we're facing today, with anti-Messiah figures rising up, and a one world government. We see lockdowns taking place, the removal of freedom of speech, removal of our right to assembly, removal of other rights like that. And we need to know how to address those things. And if we, not that there's anything wrong without studying the word, but without a practical application of it, and so by which we can be encouraged by it and know how to act and respond, then we may be caught off guard. And that's one of the warnings that Yeshua gave us. And he said that at the time of his return, that there people will be marrying and giving in marriage, that people will be will be caught up with the cares of this world. And if you're looking at everything the way I'm looking at everything, it's so overwhelming. And, people are doing their best to stay employed. People are doing their best to work around all of the mask laws and the assembly laws. And now today they're actually rolling out across the nation the COVID-19 vaccines. We need to know how to respond to that. We need to know what to do and how we do not give up our own constitutional rights, our Bill of Rights, our rights as believers, and that we are not succumb or bullied into giving up our liberties, because it is in Yeshua that we've been given the freedom of speech. We've been given the right to live in this nation under a constitution that I believe was divinely inspired. Now, is it the word of God? No. But the Constitution, for any document that was put together by men, has many elements of perfection within it. Now, I'm not talking about the amendments that came afterwards, but I am talking about the Constitution that was given to us, by which a woman spoke to Benjamin Franklin after they came up with the Constitution and says, well, do we have a republic? And Benjamin Franklin said, it's yes, if you can keep it. So there you go. I mean, if we're looking at these things and we're looking at all this, this is the time more than any that if we're a biblical believer, if we believe in the ways of Yahweh, if we believe in Torah, if we believe the very book by which the Constitution of the United States was made and put together, then we need to understand that if the Constitution's in jeopardy, then our Torah lifestyle is in jeopardy. And if they're going to go after the Constitution, then they're going to go after our faith and our ability to assemble, our ability to study, and so I want you to know the truth. I want you to know that the truth will set you free. And this is not to cause people to worry, but this is for us to be encouraged, to encourage one another and to be encouraged so that we will stand blameless before the Almighty in that day. I want to say hello this evening too. We've got a Chance there in the chat room. Good to see you, Chance. I'm glad that you're there. Also, Joe, the warrior of Yah. It's good to have you with me this evening as well. And so putting all those things together, I want to hit some of the headlines. Of course, I've already mentioned this so far, and this has to do with the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccination. In fact, I saw an article in our local news agency in Amarillo yesterday, and it said, hey, we're so excited. The vaccination is now coming to Amarillo, Texas. And they were so excited because by this afternoon, they were going to start giving frontline health workers the vaccination. And the only thing that I can think of in the back of my mind is, yeah, what are they going to do with this? This thing has been untested. It has been rammed through. It has been spiked with all sorts of different things that have been given known health issues. And I read one article over at IntelliHub where the author of that article put together 22 different known diseases that the COVID trial tests have caused. They have said that 80% of every subject that was part of the trials of the COVID vaccination have had symptoms of a variety. Most have symptoms that will be for a lifetime, and we're talking anything from from Guillain-Barré to death to Bell's palsy to a number of other horrible systematic changes within their body. And why is that? And we've talked about this before. It's because the COVID-19 vaccination is an mRNA vaccine. And what does that mean? It is inserting into the cells of the body foreign RNAs that will change the very makeup of the cell, literally changing the DNA of the person to that person is no longer a person. This is why many people had said, wow, is this the mark of the beast? Is this what we've been looking forward to in the book of Revelation, by which we have this mark that is put upon us? And how do we know? And how is this going to work? Well, it's very interesting that the only way that this vaccine can be transported is because it has to come at minus 80 degrees Fahrenheit or Celsius. It's one of the two. I don't know. Minus 80 degrees is cold. And so they are shipping it overnight to different places. They're packing it in dry ice so it does not lose it, and so they can get it out of the freezer and stick it into somebody's arm. And maybe not in this round, but they do have the luciferase that is part of the new delivery system for vaccinations, by which they'll give it into the forearm, and in the forearm they will it actually has particles that light up so it can be scanned with a cell phone, and you can actually see whether or not a person has been vaccinated. Now, this time around, I think right now it's simply being injected in the arm, but wait, there's more, because this is just round one. Don't look for any big type of changes in round one, in my opinion, because I think for most people to say, oh, round one wasn't so bad. But when the trial subjects took round two, that's when many people became very ill. And I think there was one person, to get this, out of all the articles I've been following over the last week, they did bring up one person, and it was part of the mainstream media, that said that, hey, I got the shots and I went through the trial and I'm just fine, and it was my duty and as a citizen and part of humanity to take these tests and these trials. And of course, it is a subjects, and most of the subjects, from what I understand, were the healthiest of the subjects that they could find. So what are they going to do now with the rollout? Because they're going to be giving it to healthcare workers first. They're going to be giving it to, and then the elderly. So the plus 65 age group. So those people that are in the nursing homes and the healthcare workers that are in the nursing homes, beware, you're next. Then the next round that they're looking at, this is all in the tier one people. The next round is going to be to blacks, browns, because they are apparently more susceptible to the COVID-19 virus that's been going on. And so they say they want to get to them first. Well, it is been known physiologically that based on the makeup of the bodies of, for example, people with a heritage from Africa, and those people with darker skin, is that it's more difficult to get the vitamin D into their system, and so they tend to be more vitamin D deficient. That is one of the number one reasons why those people that have succumbed to COVID-19, now let me put this in perspective, those people that have come to succumb to COVID-19, and I'm going to say that because we got two different categories, people that died from COVID-19 and those people that died with COVID-19. Big difference, because when you look at those numbers that were produced and presented by the CDC, one was in the neighborhood, well, last summer, it was in the neighborhood of between 9 and 10,000. It's probably a little bit more now. But those people that have died with it, that's why they get the numbers of over 300,000 here in the United States. Because anybody that was in a motorcycle accident and killed, or a skydiving accident killed, or a shark attack and killed, and then they took that swab and put it up their nose after the death and said, oh, this person tested positive with COVID-19. That's how they got the positive number. And they said, well, they must have died from COVID-19. Because if you put that on the death certificate, if you put it in terms of the process of what this person they had to do in the hospital, they say, oh, this person came into the hospital and they tested positive even though they were already dead. And it wasn't because they succumbed to an inflammation of the lungs where they basically suffocated because of the anaphylactic shock that goes on from this bioweapon, and that they couldn't breathe and they suffocated. Then they said, well, we get money if we put COVID-19 as the death. That is the fraud that's going on. Here in Amarillo, Texas, of all different places, we had a city council meeting just a couple weeks, well, it was about 3 or 4 weeks ago, right around the time of, or maybe just the week before Thanksgiving. So it's been about a month. And the city council had a meeting. They said, well, we're going to determine whether or not we're going to shut down the city because our numbers are spiking. Well, come to find out, the reason the numbers were spiking is because they reduced the number of COVID beds in the hospitals from about 900 down to 400. And then when they filled those 400 beds up with alleged COVID 19 victims, then they were at a capacity of 90%. And when you're running at a capacity of 90%, that's 90% of the 400, not 90% of the 900, then you can apply and get more federal fundings. Well, apparently the city council and the mayor is under federal investigation. That is the word that I've heard. We'll wait to see what happens with that, if that's actually true or not. But they've got some pet projects they're trying to fund, and they can bring in more money to the city. See how it's all about the money. When the Fed said money is tied to the vaccination, then and to the COVID-19, then it gave people incentive to lie about the reason why people are being hospitalized, the reason why people are being admitted into the hospital. Now, here's the real kicker, and if you haven't figured this one out yet, it does have to do with when you bring somebody in the hospital and they are so sick that they can hardly breathe, and so they say, oh, let's ventilate them. The majority of the people that have died in the hospitals isn't because of the COVID-19, it's because the ventilator itself killed them, because they turned up the pressure too high. Mainly the thing, what people need, and it seems to come out, and they've testified in Congress, is that they need steroids. They need to stop the inflammation. They need some other things like zinc. They need some other things that have come out that are sensitive. I said it right now on this broadcast, they could flag, and I don't want to bring down the network by flagging certain things, but understanding one of the things that's been vacant in people's terminology and discussions is a good, strong immune system. Okay. And that's really basic. We've talked about that before. And that's why keeping your essential vitamins and minerals up, especially those people that have the proper levels of vitamin D3 within their body, have proven to have a complete recovery rate, even if they do get sick. So make sure you're getting your vitamin D3, take it with K2, they synergize together, take your zinc, take multivitamins, make sure you're on that. Talk to your doctor if you're taking any type of medications, anything like that. But there's nothing better than just making sure you're on a good regimen, getting a good healthy diet, and all those type of things. So that's all I want to say about this. And also, let's talk about some other things that are going on. Here's one of the things about emails. This is over from Zero Hedge. There's emails that reveal scientific effort to engineer this thing called natural origin theory to dispel fringe lab speculation for COVID-19. So in other words, one of the things that's coming out is that that scientists are drafting these letters and they're emailing back and forth to try to tamp down on fringe theories about the possibility of the virus that came from a lab. And so these influential scientists are wanting to come up with language that basically negates the fact that this was a lab-borne virus, which would make it a bioweapon. But we do know, if you look at the origins of it, is that it did come out of Fort Detrick. It was smuggled. It was sent out of the country because it's illegal for them to do these things in the United States. So they smuggled it out of the country through Canada over to the Wuhan lab, which Dr. Fauci was involved in the making of it at Fort Detrick and also in the production of it over the Wuhan lab. Yes, he's connected with it. His fingerprints are on it. And but what they've been wanting to do, and you've probably seen this, is that they want it to seem as if it was natural, that it seems to be some type of mutation from a bat virus, the bat coronavirus, and that somehow it escaped and it moved over into the human to afflict human beings. Well, it's very interesting that it's the first origins of it happened to be in Wuhan, where the Wuhan lab was, and that it spread. The other side of the story is that it does seem like that the Chinese fingerprints are all over it, to where, and other nefarious enemies of the United States of America, foreign and domestic, by which they would release it in America and upon the American people, by which they could come up with the rules of social distancing and masks and all this type of thing, by which they could imply or apply those rules during the election cycle. And by which they could come up with saying, well, it's too dangerous to go out to the polls, so let's stick all these ballot boxes all over the place, and we'll mail you a ballot, and you can just drop it in a mailbox somewhere, and then the Postal Service will pick it up and turn them in, and that's where we got the tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of these ballots being flooded in, all which seem to be for one particular Democrat candidate who announced that, hey, he was the winner of the election last night. We'll talk, if we got time, we'll talk about that as well. So what are they trying to do? They're trying to squash the communications as to where this came from. When it came out originally, the Indian doctors, the African doctors, the doctors within the United States, they all were researching the coronavirus, finding out the SARS-CoV-2 is what it technically is. Where is it? What did it come from? What does it look like? Under the electron microscope, the Lancet Journal published the research done by the Indian doctors and scientists who found out that there were 4 different genes spliced into the coronavirus. And that includes the SARS, it included HIV, and I think there was a couple others, but those are the 3. So the coronavirus, the SARS, and the HIV, all spliced in there, where you can actually see where the genetic connections were fused together and spliced into the cell. And that was to give it gain of function. That was so that it could spread easily. And that's where it could cause fear among people, particularly in a place where the propaganda machines from all of the mainstream media could actually take that information and then create a hysteria. And we've been seeing that quite effective in America. I mean, how many people do you know right now that are very much concerned, very worried if they go outside, if they get contaminated, if they get near somebody and people aren't wearing masks, and that they will run from you, or they will, in so many words, shall we say, argue or cuss you out about why you're not wearing a mask, why are you not doing that? And how many people in America actually don't even believe this is taking place, but because they just don't want an incident, that they won't wear, that they will go ahead and put on a mask, falling into that compliance. Guys, here we got to understand where we're coming from. We got to understand it. We got to stand up. If people would stand up and say, look how much of a farce this is, and even that masks don't do any good especially when the virus RNA is only 1 micron, and the masks are only stop anything that's 10 microns or larger, then those things are just going to flow in and out of the mask. Besides the mask, they're just incubating 80 different bacterial cultures under that nice, warm, moist conditions, and they're rebreathing in bacteria back into their lungs. And one of the number one things that we're seeing is a release of bacterial pneumonia, and which is not surprising, might test positive under the PCR test for coronavirus. So, but it's not only that, it's those spores that as they breathe those things out, they're just going out in the air. So what about other people breathing in those spores that people are cultivating within their masks, because they're not changing their masks? They're not, which should be changed probably every 20 to 30 minutes if they're wearing them consistently. And let alone, I mean, it's the only thing that it does is makes other people feel safe. And it's because of the propaganda. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. Here's the other thing. Did COVID murder the flu? This was over at Zero Hedge. And when you look at the numbers and you look at the graphs that are coming out, and with people that are going to the emergency room with influenza-like illnesses, that it's amazing that the flu, I don't have this in color. I don't know if you can see this right now. You can see right now there is one graph, but here's the one that's very interesting, and I don't know if it's going to focus very well, but across the bottom, and I'm trying to see my finger in the picture, across the bottom here, it's a flat line. That is this year's flu. Isn't that amazing? But if you notice where all those other peaks were and stuff right in there, those are last year's flu during the same type of months. It's amazing that for some reason there's actually no flu going on this year, but we're having all sorts of spikes saying that there's a second wave that perhaps is a coronavirus. The second is the flu, the second wave of the coronavirus. It's something that happens every year. Why is it just happening this year? Why is it that the line is pretty flat this year and for the flu as opposed to other years? That's a good question, and that's one of the things that I have a question about. Why is that going on? Why? Because it's to control the narrative. The next thing I wanted to bring out, and this has to do with something that's very interesting as well related to the coronavirus. You need to know about this, and this is from Zero Hedge. This is today's article. Tuesday, December 15th, it says new Chinese study confirms that COVID-19 attacks. Now, I don't mean to upset anybody with this. We're talking biology, okay? It's very important, especially if you're trying to have children. So new Chinese study confirms COVID-19 attacks testicles may affect male fertility. And so they have been doing a study. It's been a limited study at this point in time, but they're actually finding that those that have had COVID-19 may have infertility issues. And this is something, actually, it came out last spring when the studies were coming out saying, hey, this thing can affect the ability to procreate and have families, and because it's affecting males more than it is females. Well, guess what? With the new coronavirus vaccination in the mRNA proteins, it is actually afflicting the ability of a woman to produce and build a placenta. So when upon pregnancy, it's normal, that the fertilized egg, the woman's body now begins to provide that sac that protects that embryo and that baby that is now formed. Well, the attack of the new vaccines will, because it is of the same protein, and the body will begin to attack itself when it begins to produce those things in the normal development of after the egg is fertilized. So it seems like from both ends, they are really trying to go after and to reduce the population of the world, which goes along with what the Georgia Guidestone says, to reduce the population of the world to 500 million. And so what an attack this has been, and it's quiet and people aren't talking about it, but it's also one of the dangers of the new vaccine. And it's also one of the things that they found out that is taking place as a result of the COVID-19. Now, I'm going to just say this. By the way, I hear this all the time. People say, well, I know somebody that died of COVID-19. And okay, yes, that can be true, that has happened, that there have been people that have died with it. But the problem is that the information is so diluted because of the federal rewards for positive COVID testing, that we can't trust those numbers. And just because someone went to the hospital during normal flu season and that they passed away, and that they weren't having heart issues, that they weren't having a stroke issue, that they weren't having severe diabetes, that if they weren't dealing with those things, then maybe we could say, okay, yeah, that this person did. But we do know in regular flu season, when someone is healthy, it's possible that that a person can pass away. But we also know, usually it's because they're vitamin deficient. They don't have vitamin D. They don't have zinc in their body. They don't have the way to really good vitamin C levels to fight off the disease. I mean, this is the natural way that God uses to build the immune system within the body, where we're able to resist many of the other attacks that we find in the environments that we live in. and so normal course of colds and flus is good. We should have that, maybe not every year, but if you're a healthy person, but understand it's just part of the process by which we are made strong. So anyway, I wanted to bring that to your attention. So many things that are taking place. Here's something else that broke today on the Hal Turner Radio Show.com, and it is about where a Catholic bishop says that it's moral responsibility to take the COVID vaccine, and even though it contains the aborted fetus cells. So you can go over there, take a look at that article. This is what the Catholic Church is coming out and saying, telling the Catholic people that they should go out and that is their moral responsibility to take the vaccine. But I think he's forgetting that there is a greater moral responsibility, which has to do with this, that what about the moral responsibility for those where it says when 80% of the people are going to be affected for life with some type of reaction that comes from the vaccination? What about those frontline workers that they're not able to work because they are limited in what they can do and how they can work, and that they're needed in the hospital, but they can't because they're dealing with chronic diseases because of the vaccination? What about our police and our firemen that are affected? What about those that are inmates within the prison systems that are being forced to take the vaccinations and their DNA is being changed? And the prison guards, their frontline workers. What about our military that will be handicapped and not be able to defend our nation because of the rollout of this vaccination? Where's the morality in that? Because I'm going to tell you this, there's 99.9% of recovery from COVID-19. So why not just, if you get it, you're going to recover. It's going to be fine. You're going to be okay. Don't fear. Don't be afraid. You're not going to die. So I'm sorry, it just gets me upset. But here's my question is, how many will have their God consciousness completely severed because their DNA will no longer be human, opposed to the way that our creator intended us or intended for us? Here's a question for you. And how many will be enslaved to the patents owned by Bill and Melinda Gates and Fauci and the like? Because if your DNA has been spliced and changed because of an mRNA and you're no longer human, then you belong to the creator of that mRNA vaccination. You're changed. Now you belong to them. You're a product of their gene modifications. And is that not immoral? So these bishops, and this is specifically the leaders of the U.S. Bishop Conference, that declared that Catholics have a moral responsibility to be vaccinated against the coronavirus. Well, guess what? Archbishop Joseph Naumann, chairman of the committee, you are immoral. I'm just going to tell you that straight up. What about this Luciferian inspired engineering for the destruction of humanity at their hand, unless we say no? So, you got to talk to your people. You got to talk to your family. You got to talk to your coworkers. You got to get the word out and say, look, we're not going to go there. We're not going there. Don't do it. Don't do it. Guess what? If you're the only one working in your job site that doesn't take it, you may be the only one that's going to be consistently at work. How about this? That's my opinion. How about this? Okay, I'm kind of tired of talking about that. Let's talk about something that came out this last week and it broke. I thought this was very interesting, and this broke on the Hal Turner Radio Show over the weekend. A lot of people haven't heard much about this, maybe didn't hear it at all, but it is from a source that spoke to Hal Turner directly, who works at the Supreme Court of these United States. Last week, there was a a hearing, or there was a lawsuit that actually made it all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, having to do with a lawsuit presented by the state of Texas against Pennsylvania and the other states, by saying, look, you watered down our vote by your fraudulent elections. The evidence is clear. You've taken away, in other words, you took away the voice of those that are real voters within our own states. And so we are suing you for that. That was what was before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court docketed the case and it went into chamber. And this is one of those times where a lot of times they handle these discussions over the phone. I guess they call it telephonically. But this one, they were all called together in into chambers to discuss this privately. Well, this article, not only was it printed on the HalTurnerRadioShow.com, it was also printed over at SteveQuail.com. Steve Quail actually called Hal Turner and asked them to unlock it because that people need to know. So here's what it reads. It says, from a source deep inside the U.S. Supreme Court, as they discuss the pending Texas lawsuit against Pennsylvania et al. And here's the conversation. It says, Hal, as you know, I'm a clerk for one of the justices at SCOTUS, that is the Supreme Court of the United States. Today was like nothing we have never seen. The justices are arguing loudly behind closed doors. The justices met in closed and sealed room, as a standard. Usually it's very calm. However, today we could hear screaming all the way down the hall. They met in person because they didn't trust telephonic meeting as secure. Chief Justice Roberts was screaming. So Justice Roberts, remember this guy, he was screaming, are you going to be responsible for the rioting if we hear this case? Don't tell me about Bush versus Gore. We weren't dealing with riots then. You are forgetting what your role here is, Neil, and I don't want to hear from the two junior justices anymore. I will tell you how you will vote. Justice Clarence Thomas says, this is the end of democracy, John. I can just hear him saying that. And when they left the room, Roberts, the libs, and Kavanaugh had big smiles. Alito and Thomas were visibly upset. ACB and Gorsuch didn't seem fazed at all. Clearly, Chief Justice Robertson, this is a firsthand person who witnessed this. They heard him. They saw him depart from the room. And the article goes on. It says, clearly, Chief Justice Roberts is intimidated by the Antifa left-wing rioting. Well, one has to wonder if maybe he can be intimidated more by some actions of the right wing. And so, anyway, this is information. You can go there. You can check it out. You can see this was behind a paywall, and they made it public for everybody to know that there is a battle, and this battle is going on for the Supreme Court. This battle right now, by the way, now here's where you should not give up hope. Texas, well, let me put it this way. The President of the United States went back and through his attorneys, and I think through Sidney Powell and Lee, I forget his last name off the top of my head right now, but nevertheless, they did go back. They've refiled the lawsuits, but they did it for President Trump in his name, because he basically said the outcome of that court decision was that that the states did not have standing to bring it against other states. Well, that's the whole reason why they brought it to the Supreme Court, is because this was a state versus state issue, and therefore no state Supreme Court or federal court was sufficient enough to hear the case, along with the documents and the information that was out there, the evidence that was being presented for the proving that there was fraud that took place, there was illegal actions that took place, that the states did not follow their own laws. And I think that was part of the case, is that they had particular voting laws that are on the statutes, but the governors, the Secretary of States, they actually changed those rules, and they have no standing to change those rules. And because of that, it caused the vote to be watered down, and that it affected the votes and the people that had clear and free elections. So now I put that in quotes, by the way, because I'm not quite sure if anybody's had free and clear elections, because I think they were trying to even swing Texas, but there were so many people in the state of Texas that were out voting for President Trump that the sheer overwhelming number of votes for President Trump that they couldn't change the algorithms without making it obvious. Well, with the evidence that they have found in this changing of the voting, the ballots, the excess of ballots that were coming in the middle of the night, with the number of changes in the algorithms. I think that at one place where they did some forensics on the voting machine, they said that they found it was a 63 or a 68% error rate. Well, according to the federal election guidelines, that a machine cannot have a greater than 1 in 250,000 error rate. So they had set the threshold so high that they could manipulate it in any way they wanted, as well as that if there was a ballot that got kicked out, for example, they had a lot of pre-printed ballots for Biden. It didn't have anybody else's name on there voted for, but just Biden, but it's pre-printed, even had the little dark circle filled in. Well, it kicked those out as well because they were pre-printed. They were invalid ballots. Well, those they were counting, and they were in spite of the error rate, and they were running those back through. And in some places, as some of the evidence is coming out, is that whenever they run in a patch of 50 ballots, that if it somewhere in the middle of the ballot system, as it was kicking it out, said, well, there's an error. Well, instead of clearing it and then resubmitting those 50 ballots, they would just add those ballots back in. So if there were whatever the number were, especially with the number of fraudulent ballots, they were just re-adding to the tally of all the votes that were for Biden in those stacks. This is part of the affidavits. This is part of the things. Now, understand that these are also issues that we need to be concerned of as Americans, because those that are whistleblowers, there have been 3 cases that we know of right now where 2 people have been shot. One had Molotov cocktail thrown through their dining room window. Over in Michigan, there's I believe it was the young lady that is originally from India that spoke in the Michigan hearing that she was shot at the other morning, and it went viral on YouTube, where she gets out of her house. In the morning, she's going to work. She pulls out. As she's pulling out, a vehicle pickup truck pulls out behind her and blocks her. And a guy jumps out of the car and empties 8 rounds into her car. Amazingly, she, at that close distance, she was not harmed. You see her, this is all taken from one of those doorbell videos. She takes off, the car chases her down the street, and in just a few moments, she pulls back up in front of her house in the front lawn and runs inside of the house. The car passes by slowly and then takes off. So this is very, very serious business. And we need to understand that this is something that we need to be careful about. I just came across an article. I wanted to not go back into this, but maybe I should bring this up as well. This is a bulletin, by the way, Hal Turner Radio Show. You need to take a look at that. And it says, Australia COVID-19 vaccine causing HIV positive test results. I just wanted to let you know. Why? Well, we talked about HIV being spliced into COVID-19. Well, they're putting it in the vaccinations, and those people that have been in the trials, that have been taking it from this vaccine that was being developed at the Queensland College or Queensland University, South Queensland University, something like that, that they're taking these vaccinations and they're getting their blood tested. Now they're coming up positive with HIV. So just know what's going on. Okay, so to get back on this next thing, this is some information that has been passed on regarding, this is found over at naturalnews.com. And now naturalnews.com, I believe Mike Adams has been knocking it out of the ballpark. I want to bring it to your attention. You can go back and check out some of the articles in there. Lots of good articles. But just because the Electoral College met yesterday doesn't mean that Biden won. And he did come out and he gave a speech yesterday about 7:30 in their local time, basically, saying, he won the election, that type of thing, and that it was a free and fair election, even knowing that it was rigged and fraudulent. So just know that those things are going on. I'm going to hit some of these bullet points as we got just a few minutes left. But understand that the election's not over, that Biden has not been elected, and there is no president-elect currently. There's no president-elect until we have certain conditions that are met. First off, when we've got the number of fraud that's going on around the nation, is that you can't have a president-elect until those things are clearly gone through the courts. They worked out through the process inside of the statutory requirement for the Electoral College to vote. So because of that requirement, there were parallel electors chosen by 7 states as Trump accelerates his operation to seize evidence. So in Arizona, in Nevada, in Michigan, I believe in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, I believe also in Georgia, in those swing states, as these states met, even in Michigan, where they were not allowed to go into the state house, where they were supposed to be allowed in to cast their vote, they still met. I think in Nevada, they still met, and they sealed them. They did it under protocol. They did it exactly like it was supposed to be. And now the states are sending parallel electors. Isn't that interesting? They're sending that up. This whole thing is still wide open. Do not listen to the mainstream media saying it's not over until like they say, the fat lady sings. And it's actually not over. And according to history and into prior protocol and prior precedents that's been set, according to the Constitution, it's not set until 12 noon on the 20th of January. So they could decide all the way up. They have until 11:59 on the 20th of January to decide who's going to be president of the United States. But President Trump still has several different options that he can use. In spite of this, the word is that 90% of his staff has left him for other jobs. We need to pray for President Trump because he is out there fighting this on his own. He only has 10% of his staff to help him through, even with all the different things that go with being in his position as chief administrator of the United States and all the things that are on his plate right now. Those people that are left are working overtime. And because people are just afraid that the deep state has won, that through fraud, through trickery, through all these different rigged elections, that it's all over. Well, don't give up. And we cannot give up. Biden makes false claims that it was free and fair. Bill Barr has been exposed. And why is that? Because here's what happened with Bill Barr this week. And he resigned. He will be leaving on December 23rd. Remember that day. It's very important. On the 24th, President Trump gave leave to all federal workers, except for particular ones, which he is saying that they will have to work. And I think that has to do with national security and other elements within the government. They will be working, and that's important for us to know. But Bill Barr, it's come out that he's known about the Hunter Biden laptop since December of 2019. Why is that important? Because on that laptop, it shows the seriousness of the involvement of Joe Biden. It also shows the involvement of Kamala Harris, besides Hunter Biden and their involvement with China. And why do I say Kamala Harris? Well, she has been listed in an email as the one by which she would be a coordinator by disseminating information. And that came out in an email that was found on Hunter Biden's laptop. So she is involved just as much as Joe Biden is, who has made money off of deals selling state secrets to China. Part of that includes selling military secrets, which has given the aeronautical industry of China the ability to create a jets based on the F-35 system. And those things were sold under Joe Biden's watch. Made some deals with that. It's also that Newt Gingrich has been named to the Defense Policy Board, which advises the DoD, and Chris Miller. And by the way, in the last couple weeks, they kicked off that board certain people like Henry Kissinger and what was that lady? She was like the Secretary of State under Bill Clinton. And I forget her name right now, but she has been on that board advising the DoD, the Department of Defense, and having a deep state character controlling defense policy, undermining President Trump for these last 4 years. So we also have issues where Trump must convince America before the January 6th that the election was stolen, and this could cause the pro-Trump electors to be chosen. Also, there's many lawsuits that are underway in swing states and pending before SCOTUS. So just know that these lawsuits have not been decided yet, that time's running short for Trump to invoke the Insurrection Act and seize ballots as evidence of fraud. So here's the next thing is that General Flynn has come out. A number of other advisors to President Trump have come out and said, and these are military advisors to President Trump, that he must invoke the Insurrection Act. I keep wanting to say the Resurrection Act, and so that they can control the whole situation involving the enemies, both domestic and foreign, that are coming against our Constitution. So just know that these things are going on. It also came out there were a number of governors, by the way, that have found their names on a list where they are connected to Communist China. So I don't have that list in front of me. I know one governor in particular, but so we know, but what it's really revealed is there's a number of governors that are out there that have betrayed their state. They betrayed the government, the people of their states. They betrayed these United States, and they're in bed with the Communist Chinese. Okay, I wanted to tell you about one other thing, and this has to do with a story that came out, and it's not been publicized very readily. It did first come out. I did see it on hellturnradioshow.com, but then I heard it from multiple other sources where people have connections in the intelligence agency, the Department of Defense, people that have inside knowledge about things that are going on. And this has to do with the Chinese communists that are training up in Canada. They were having special training for winter warfare in China, and we have found that these Chinese are in various places along our northern border. One of the things that came out in this special report was that there was a group of Chinese soldiers that were crossing over the northern border up off of Lake Superior, and an F-16 went up to fly over that area, determine what was going on, and that F-16 was shot down with some type of special energy weapon. And it wasn't just shot down as if by a missile. It was as if this energy weapon cut it in half. The pilot of that F-16 died. It looked like that he made it to the ground safely, may have been captured by the Chinese. That is still open. They don't know what happened, but he did not survive is what the word is. And the second thing is that as soon as that event took place, that the United States military did fly over a particular place in northern Maine up against the Canadian border, and they dropped a bunker buster bomb. And the U.S. Geological Service reported a seismograph reading that said it was an earthquake in that area. But when you looked at the seismological reading, is that it was more equivalent to a bomb going off as opposed to a buildup, and with a peak and then a letdown. It was a peak and then it rumbled off. And this is how they know that it was a bomb that was dropped in that area. The information that came forward is that there's a piece of property along in that northern border of Maine that was owned by a corporation of companies that go back to a particular Democrat candidate and for office. That bunker, the entry and exit doors of that bunker were sealed off first, and then the bunker buster bomb was dropped on that site and completely destroyed. Why were they doing that? Is because the bunker was full of Chinese troops, and it was built. The Chinese came in off of the Atlantic Ocean, Nova Scotia, and were transported into that location, waiting for some type of word to move forward. The interesting thing is that the Hal Turner radio show, through its viewers and stuff, they sent Hal Turner pictures of U.S. heavy armaments, which include tanks and armored personnel carriers, trainloads of these vehicles being sent to the northern Maine border about, I want to say it's probably been about 2 months ago, or maybe in the last 6 weeks. Why would they be sending those tanks up into that area, other than that there is a cause for a place to set up to defend our border? The other thing is that there's been heavy movement of troops across the nation. There's a website and a YouTube site called Monkey Works, where they're tracking different air traffic. And one of the air traffics that they've been finding is military transport planes dropping a number of troops off in Nevada. Some have been saying, well, it's just normal maneuvers that they're doing, and they're building up troops so they can have these maneuvers, or is it something else? We don't know. We're going to see how these things are going to play out. But we do know this. With the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccination, and one of the first tier groups of people is also our military, are the Chinese communists waiting to see if our frontline people are going to be weakened by the mass vaccination, by which they can simply roll into our country without the defense of our people that we need, those that are healthcare workers, those that are military, those that are police, and those that are firemen. Will the American people be left to defend themselves? And so why am I saying this? Is because this is a time by where we're also looking at this. And I know my time's running short. And so if you want to hang with me a little bit longer, you can. Our time seems to be running short, and there's a connection. And I had a conversation a while back with Eddie Chumney, and we were talking about prophecy, Bible prophecy, and about the fall of the end time Babylon. And part of the fall of the end time Babylon was that America would have to be taken out of the way before the attack would come against Israel, and which would be or could be called the Gog-Magog War. Now, we've always looked at it as in terms of a group of nations within the Middle East coming against Israel, which is, yes, it could be, but it could also be a group of nations that come against the Israel that is in exile, which many of those, if you follow history and you follow the migration trails, ended up in North America. And to take out America would be to take out Ephraim, essentially, taking out the power or the military force that protects Israel today. And with these things that are going on with the Chinese communists that are troops that are on our northern border, that are in China, that have been allowed there by Justin Trudeau, who was so upset when the military said we're canceling these maneuvers with the Chinese, when America alerted them as to what they were doing, that Trudeau came out and said, you cannot make any decisions unless it comes through me first. Justin Trudeau is compromised. And with that said, is that there have been prophetic words regarding attacks upon America, which would come from an invasion of the North. It would involve the Chinese. It would also involve the Russians. And then you know how the Russians have been maligned over the last 4 years. That it's always Russia, 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 when in fact, the ones that have been really attacking America from every way possible has been through the Chinese and through the asymmetric warfare, and where they've come through with a bioweapon of the coronavirus, where they've come through, they have compromised many people in high places in the United States, including Eric Swalwell, who had an 8-year intimate relationship with a Chinese woman that was on his staff. There is that. And he's been removed and he was on the intelligence committee, and he's been removed from that committee. Other people compromised, people in high positions that have been passing on information to the Chinese. Chinese wants to remove America as a threat. China has been promised by multinational elites that they would become the governing nation of the world. But so in the process, they have to bring down America. Are we seeing it unfold before our very eyes? I don't know. It could be. And because it could be, we need to be alert. We need to be a people that are praying. Now, one thing that I find very interesting is something that Henry Groover had said in one of the visions that he shared, and it was how there was an incoming army invading the land of America. And they were invading the cities, and they were destroying everything along its path. But in these wilderness places, there were groups of people that were in encampments, and that they were a praying people. And when the hordes of these troops were passing through, the people were praying, and these troops left them alone. In fact, it was like the troops just went around them. They went around them, and then gathered back together on the other side of the camps and kept on going as if they were never there. And it reminded me so much of what it would be like during the greater Exodus, when people have fled the cities and they are in their groups, in their Sukkot groups, or however they've gathered, where they have are waiting for the direction of what to do. And by the way, go back and look at our Life of Worship Amarillo channel, and listen to our conference that we had this last week with Eddie and Tammy Johnson, and where they were talking about several very, very interesting things that the Father's shown them, and they wanted to pass on to us to weigh and to judge. So, and I thought, and it relates to the greater Exodus and how we as Americans and those in North America will be able to flee from America. So you want to go back and check that out on our website, Life of Worship Amarillo channel on YouTube. So know that we have a God that he never is exhausted for options with his people, that he is always ready and available to listen. And if we're listening, that we're going to know when the time to flee to the wilderness will be. We're going to know when the time is. Now, we're always looking to a Passover event, because we know what happened to the fathers will happen to the sons. We're always looking to that Passover event, but be aware that how the Father has spoken to our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. How did he speak? He spoke to them in visions, in dreams. He spoke to them by giving them visitation by angels, by messengers, by Yeshua. And he'll speak to us before. Remember the dreams, the dream where Joseph, the father of Yeshua, the stepfather, if you want to call him that, of Yeshua, was given a dream in the middle of the night to gather up his family, pack up, and leave, because Herod was coming to kill every boy under the age of 2 years old. And in the middle of the night, he got that vision, that dream. He woke up, he gathered his family together, and they took off and went to Egypt. This is how the Father can speak to us. This is why we need to stay tuned, be in tune with what's going on. This is why we walk in spirit and truth. We're aware of the current events. Why are we talking about the current events? Because all of these things I've talked about today, and there's so much more, relate. They relate to the day and the hour that we're living in. You know, you say, well, how do we know that it's right here at our doorstep? How do we know it's not 10 years off? Well, the signs are all there, and all of the protocols are in place where eventually you're going to have a pass, a COVID passport. You're going to have something on your phone, and then it's going to be something like on your passport, and then eventually it's going to be something electronic that is not on your phone or whatever. It'll be through nanobodies and through some type of nanotechnology that's going to be in your body and in your system that they can put in you through some type of vaccination. So know that you'll have sensors put in you one way or another that it'll alert an entryway at a store, at a bank, by which they can say, you cannot enter, you cannot pass, you cannot buy, you cannot sell, you cannot participate in commerce because you have not participated in for the safety and the welfare of the people in your community. These are the things that are going on. All of it's parallel. If Joe Biden gets into the election, we're going to see these things accelerated. Know that. Within the first, I believe Kamala Harris said, within the first 60 days, if she has her way, she will remove our Second Amendment rights. That is a very serious word. Joe Biden said that he wanted to have one of those presidential candidates from Texas, I forget what his name is right now, he said, yes, in not so many words, we're coming for your AR-15s. So these are the different things. This is the group of communists that are taking power, that are going to take away our constitutional rights, and they're going to use it. But do not be fearful. Do not be afraid, because this just really begins to tell us that we are in the timeline of a great deliverance called the Greater Exodus. So with that said, I wanted to leave that with you, knowing that look up, our redemption is drawing nigh. This is the day and the hour that we're living in. This is exciting. And if you go back and you watch that message that was given to us by Eddie and Tammy, oh my goodness, you're going to go, oh, wow. No wonder the word says that people no longer ask about what happened during the first Exodus, because even those that experience that will want to know, and they'll be asking us about this greater Exodus. So remember to check us out. We're at lifeofworshipamarillo.org. I didn't throw any banners up during this time. I'm going to throw that up. If you want to get in contact with us, you can go to our website. On our website, you'll also be able to see our email, and I'm going to throw that on the screen real quick. You can rewind this and get those up at another time. It's LOW@lifeofworshipamarillo.org. That's our email. Contact us. Let us know what you think. Please pray for us. Pray for our ministry. Well, our ministry here in Amarillo, Texas is continuing to grow and to continue to go strong. We're having one of our first inmates that we have been ministering to re-enter this week, and if you would like to help support the re-entry of these inmates, we've been discipling him for quite a while, and this kid is just growing in Yahweh, and it's just amazing. We're excited to have him. He's going to be making his home with us in Amarillo and be a part of Life of Worship. And we want to encourage him. We're going to have to get him hygiene supplies and set him up at housing, and get his utilities all set up, get him some furnishings. All these things cost money, but he's number one. He's the first one out, and they're sending him home with an early release. So how many more out there that are going to be there. So please, you can you go back to our website. There's a place that you can donate, and it'll connect you with our PayPal account, and just designate in there, I want to help with your prison ministry. I want to get the word, the Torah, and these Torah portions to these inmates, but I also want to help them re-enter. We want to give them a fighting chance and a successful re-entry back into society when so many things have been set up to work against these inmates. And so we want to help them, and we want to speak into their lives and minister to them. So with that said, and give us a thumbs up if you like what we're talking about. Pass this word along. Put it on your social media. Let people know what we're talking about. We want to make sure the word gets out. And until next time, shalom.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.
I know a place where we can go to lay the troubles down.